Hey there guys, and welcome back to yet another video. Now in today's video, this is going to be a first part of a Doctor Who DVD collection video series. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because recently I hit over 1,000 subscribers, which when I started this channel back in 2012, honestly I did not expect to reach this far in terms of a subscriber count. But the fact that I actually reached over 1,000 subscribers is something that I'm extremely proud of, and I'd also like to give a couple of mentions to the Whoadicts, because at the time of recording this video it's their 7th anniversary, but I'm not sure when this video is going to go out, but at the time of recording this video it's their 7th anniversary, and recently I joined in one of their streams and they gave me a lot of mentions and they increased my subscriber count a little bit. So I owe a huge thank you to them, because obviously they've got a lot of subscribers, and I think they're probably the biggest Doctor Who themed YouTube channel, maybe alongside Mr. TARDIS and Ace Creeper, I think. But yeah, huge thank you to them. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this Doctor Who DVD video series. Now I've done quite a few collection videos in the past, but I think the previous one I did, it might have been about possibly, I can't remember how long it was, but I know I did one video where it was almost about the same length as a Doctor Who new series episode. So hopefully they won't be that long, but I'm going to give you all of my thoughts on all of the stories that are in my collection. I don't think I've watched some of them yet, well, a couple of them, because I've got a lot, and there are some that I just haven't got around to watching yet, but the ones that I have seen, I'll give you my thoughts on them, and you can comment down below and tell me what you think. Okay, so starting off with the 1960s, we have the Lost in Time box set, which is a compilation set of Lost Doctor Who episodes, although it's a little bit outdated now because of the fact we've now got Enemy of the World fully and about 90% of the Web of Fear. And as you can see, this DVD is signed by Deborah Watling, who sadly is no longer with us, and Wendy Pavbury as well, so that's cool. It's a really fantastic Doctor Who box set, and it's probably an essential set if you're a fan of 1960s era of Doctor Who. And we have the very first story, which is An Unearthly Child. I think everyone says the first episode is fantastic and the other 3 episodes aren't that good, and unfortunately I'm in that category of opinions when it comes to the story. I don't think it's anything special. I know it's the first Doctor Who story, but even because it's just the first story doesn't mean to say it's a good one, in my opinion. And then we have The Daleks, which is a good story, but it's just a bit too long, and I'd say possibly a little bit overrated. There's some great stuff to it, of course, because it is the first Dalek story, but I think it could have been a really fast-paced 4 or even 5-part story to a stretch. But no, it's still a good story, and obviously because it's the first Dalek story, I think no Doctor Who DVD collection is complete without the first 3 set of stories. And then we have The Edge of Destruction, which is an extremely underrated story. I really enjoy it. I know some people tend to forget about this one, mainly because of the fact it's overshadowed by the Daleks and probably the Keys of Marinus as well. But yeah, The Edge of Destruction is a great little Doctor Who story. It's only 2 parts, so you can watch it in one sitting, and it's a great character piece for the main characters, because they're all effectively in one room. And then we have The Keys of Marinus, which is a good story. I know a lot of people really like this one. I just thought it was okay. I do think I need to give it a rewatch at some point, because I think I did remember it dragging quite a bit, but no, I would like to give this another go at some point. Then we have an absolutely fantastic story, which is The Aztecs, which is signed by William Russell, who plays Ian, and yeah, this is a great story, and if you haven't checked this one out, it's one of the quintessential, I think that's the word, quintessential Doctor Who 1960 stories. It's a very good historical story, one that I really enjoyed, and it's just a fun bit of entertainment. I wouldn't say it's one of the best stories ever, but I'd say it's still a fantastic Doctor Who story nonetheless. And we have The Sensorites, which is quite an underrated Doctor Who story. I think the first episode is really good, but it does tend to drag a bit because it is quite a long story. But again, it's one of those stories that I do need to give a rewatch. And then we have The Reign of Terror, and it says it features 2 exclusive animated episodes. The animation for this, I personally really enjoy it, and this is an absolutely fantastic historical story. It's really, really good. One that I definitely need to rewatch at some point, because it's just, I remember really, really enjoying it the first time. I don't think I've watched it that many times, but I think I did get this a couple of years ago, or last year, I think. I can't quite remember when I got it, but I remember just really enjoying it. And then we have The Planet of Giants, which again is another good story. I think this is one that is slightly overlooked by some fans, I think, but it's quite an ambitious story, and one that's really ahead of its time. And it's only 3 parts long, so it's not like a dragging 6-part story. So it's a very interesting little Doctor Who story, I think. It's one that I don't see many people talk about, but if you're one of the people that does enjoy the story, then I'm happy for you, because it's a really great Doctor Who story. And then we have the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Now, with me, I've got a bit of a... I think most of me doesn't like the story. I know a lot of people are probably going to get offended by that or whatever, because I know it's iconic in many ways, but I will say I think it's mainly loved just because of the first Doctor speech at the end. If you take that out, it's not the greatest story in the world. There are 2 episodes in the middle, episodes 3 and 4, that could easily be taken out, and I don't think the story would change much, really. It's a couple of episodes too long, and if it was 4 parts, I think it would be a lot better. But there are some of the production values in this story which aren't great. I know it's in the 1960s, but there are some production values in other stories which are fantastic, but in this story I don't think they're that good. The Rescue, which I thought was quite a weird little story. I enjoyed it, but I just found it to be a bit of a weird one, to be honest. I think it's the first story to introduce Vicky, and I like Vicky. I think she's good. It's okay, I suppose. Then we've got The Romans, which is a really funny story. I really enjoyed this one as well. I think the Rescue and The Romans box set was quite it was a box set I got last year, I think, or beginning of the year, I can't quite remember. The Romans, it's a good story, that one. And then we have The Web Planet, which is, I think a lot of people don't highly regard the story at all. In fact, I think it's quite a hated Doctor Who story. Well, I wouldn't say I hated it, but I think it's really, really ambitious, and I'm surprised they did it in the first place. But I think the Zarbi and the Menoptera, they're good ideas, but it was just lost in the way it was executed, unfortunately. The Space Museum. I've always liked the story. I know it's quite a forgettable William Hartnell story, but it's a story that I've always found quite interesting. I think the main problem people have with it is that it can be a bit boring at times, but I do quite enjoy the story, I think. And then we have the infamous The Chase, which is probably one of the worst Doctor Who stories, I think, ever written. Which is weird considering it was written by Terry Nation, the king of Dalek stories and creator of the Daleks. Oh, it's just a mess, and the Daleks are at their worst here, although the only redeeming feature about the story is the mechanoids, because they are quite cool ideas, and I'm surprised they made action figures of them, to be honest. The Chase is one of the worst Doctor Who Dalek stories, I think. It might be the worst Dalek story, I'm not sure. Then we have The Time Meddler, which is a fantastic William Hartnell story. I think I've seen a few people say it's a bit overrated, but I think it's really, really good. I think Peter Butterworth, I think that's his name, who plays the monk, gives an absolutely fantastic performance, and I love the setting, the location work. It's just a really, really great story as well. It's a nice 4-part, I think it's 4 parts, just a really good 4-part story, I think. And then we have The Ark, which is quite an interesting one. I can't remember too much about it because I've only watched it once. And again, this is a fairly recent addition, I think, to the collection. I think I do need to give it a go with this one. And then we have The Gunfighters, which is a story that... Sorry, I nearly choked there. It's a story that I've only watched once. I don't know if I'll watch it again. But I think the first time I actually did really enjoy it. I was quite surprised that people really hate the story, but I think I did enjoy it the first time I watched it for some reason. I don't know why the hell that was. And we have The War Machines, which is a very, very good William Hartnell story, one that's way ahead of its time. And yeah, I think the War Machines themselves look absolutely fantastic, and I would like to get my hands on one of the Eagle Moss figurine collection War Machines, because they look absolutely fantastic. And then we have The 10th Planet, which is an incredible First Doctor story and a brilliant way to send off the First Doctor. It's the first story to introduce the Cybermen, it's the first story to introduce the concept of regeneration. It's just a very important Doctor Who story, which sadly we've lost the most important episode, or finale episode, the regeneration episode, which is a real shame, but I think it's believed that it's in the hands of a collector. I'm not entirely sure. Let me move on to the Patrick Troughton years. We have The Power of the Daleks, which is a story that I actually re-listened to the soundtrack of, and I still really enjoy this story. I do think it's a little bit overrated, but it's still a fantastic Doctor Who story, and if you're a fan of the Second Doctor and you haven't somehow experienced the story yet, then this is one that you should really, really check out, because I think chances are you'll probably love it. I have pre-ordered the special edition that's coming out, because it's basically got the updated animation, so it'll probably look a lot better than the original one that we got. I still think the original one's good, but I'm looking forward to how they've updated the newer one. And then we have The Underwater Menace, which I haven't actually watched yet, because I kind of only bought this for completionist. I think the only redeeming quality about this product is the cover, because that looks really nice. It's just a shame that from what I've heard, the reconstruction of the telesnaps and what have you, it just looks pathetic from what I've seen. I guess I simply refuse to watch this one. I only got this for completionist's sake, so I hope they revisit that and do a special edition at some point, or do an animated version. Then we have The Moon Base, which is a good story. I think a friend of mine, Pitch Gold Black, has pointed out a few plot holes in it. I can't exactly remember what those plot holes are, but no, I do remember really enjoying the story, and I think this is probably the best animated story. I think it just looks brilliant, and it's really, really well done, and it's always fun. It's a fun Doctor Who story, I'd say. And then we have The Macra Terror, which was quite a recent release. I think maybe was it last year or the year before, I can't quite remember. But no, this is a pretty good story. I think it's made better by the animation. I know some people complain like the cover's not great on these DVD releases of the animations, but I think a part of me likes the simplicity of it. But no, this is a really good story. Nothing fantastic, but it's a pretty good story. And then we have The Faceless Ones, which is one that I've always liked. As I mentioned in my unboxing of it, I've always liked the story, and if you haven't checked the story out, then I highly recommend you do, because it's a very good, and I think it's got a well-paced structure to it. And I think Pauline Collins, who plays Samantha Briggs's character, is just a fantastic character, and I believe she's the mother of a well-known actor called Benedict Cumberbatch, so yeah, that's pretty cool. Then we have The Tomb of the Cybermen, which is signed by Deborah Watling, which is a fantastic story, one that I do need to rewatch, because I think it is a little bit overrated, but I still think it's a fantastic story nonetheless, and definitely a story that if you have not seen it, then I think this is an essential story for your collection. Then we have The Ice Warriors, which I think it's alright. I don't think the animation's that good. I think it's probably one of the worst animations they've done for the Doctor Who releases. I just think as a story it's alright, but as I said, it's as I said before, it's one of these stories that I do need to give a rewatch. Then we have The Enemy of the World, which of course is a fantastic Doctor Who story. I know quite a few people have said it's one of their favourite stories of all time. I don't think it's quite that high on the list for me, but I still think it's an absolutely phenomenal Doctor Who story, and I'm so glad that we've got the whole thing in its entirety. We're just so blessed to have the story, I think. And then we have The Web of Fear, which is a fantastic Doctor Who story. I know some people consider this to be a bit overrated, but it's still a fantastic Doctor Who story, and it's quite funny how the BBC were nearly sued because I think the London Underground or the council, whatever, thought they actually used a real underground. It just shows how authentic that set looked, and it's just really, really atmospheric. It's a fantastic story. The Dominators, which I don't think I've actually watched yet. I should have really watched these stories before I did this video, but I know a lot of people seem to really not like the story, but I will try and give it a watch at some point. And then we have The Mind Robber, which is a very, very good story. It's quite an interesting story, although I think some people, if you're like getting into classic Doctor Who and you might have heard about the story, you'll know that features a character called the Master, but it's not the Master, it's actually the Master of the Land of Fiction. So it's easily, you can easily make a mistake about that, but no, it's a very good story, and I really love this cover. It's one of my favourite covers for classic Doctor Who DVDs. And then we have the Masterful Invasion, which is just an incredible Cyberman story. I know it's 8 parts long, but I think it does move along really, really nicely. And as you can see, my copy is signed by Wendy Padbury, who I met at Birmingham Comic Con a while ago. And yeah, it's just an incredible story. I really, really enjoyed this one. As you can see, I moved the sticker down there just so you can see the autograph up there. So it's just an absolutely fantastic story. If you haven't seen the story, I don't understand what you're doing with your life, because you really need to experience that story. And we've got The Crotons, which is a story I quite liked, actually. I did watch this, I've only watched this once, but I seem to remember really enjoying it. I think it's slightly, it's an incredibly underrated Doctor Who story for sure, but no, it's one that I seem to really liked. And then we have The Seeds of Death, which is a story that I've watched a few times, and it is just a fantastic Ice Warrior story. It's probably my favourite Ice Warrior story, because I do need to rewatch The Curse of Peladon, because I did really like that one as well. But no, at the moment this is my favourite Ice Warrior story. It's just fantastic. I would like to get the original version of this, because I do quite like the black and white Patrick Troughton face on it for some reason. That just probably shows how much of a sad fan I am. And finally, to conclude the 1960s, we have The War Games, which is a fantastic Doctor Who story. It's one of the best Doctor Who stories of all time, without question. I don't think it drags very much. I think there are a couple of episodes for me that do drag a little bit, but that's only like a minor nitpick. Everything about the story, from the characters to the production values to the direction, the writing, it's just a really, really fantastic Doctor Who story, and it's the first story to feature the Time Lords as well. So, again, much like the 10th Planet, it's another really important Doctor Who story, and it's a fantastic way to end off the Patrick Troughton era. So, yeah, I think that pretty much concludes the 1960s era. So tell me what you think of all the stories that we've got so far from that era. As you can see, there is quite a lot of them, and I'm quite glad to be fully up to date because of the fact that we've got the animations coming out, so I can just buy one and then just slot it in without having to worry about filling in the gaps too much. So yeah, that concludes part 1 of this DVD collection series. So yeah, tell me what you think of all the stories and whatever, and I shall see you for part 2, which will be of the 1970s.